Yeah, my name is Damian Brady. I am a cloud advocate at Microsoft, and I'm going to talk today about CI/CD and beyond with GitHub Actions. Now, I know it's early in the morning for you all, but some of you may have noticed there was a little issue with GitHub Actions earlier, a few hours ago, and I'll get to that in a sec. Before I do that, I just want to mention something else before we start, and that is the fact that we are all working remotely. We're all over the world. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not from the UK. Actually, that's not entirely true. I'm sure there's plenty of people with my accent who are spending a lot of time in London, from what I understand. But I am currently not located there. So for me, it's about 7 o'clock at night. Unfortunately, so my current location is there. I'm in the bedroom 4, which is also my office. So the other problem that I have at the moment is I have a kid there and there. Now the top kid here, this is exactly his bedtime. So you may hear a little bit of background screaming. For that, I apologize. If it's foreground screaming, that probably means that the demos aren't going well. And I apologize for that too. So please ignore the background screaming if you find it, if you hear that one. If, on the other hand, you hear the foreground screaming, that could be because the demos aren't going well. And one potential reason for this is that there was a bit of a problem earlier. So I just want to just really quickly switch to another screen, which is my demo one. And this is the, wrong one. This is the GitHub status page, and right now it's showing me that everything is operational. This GitHub Actions section an hour or so ago was not so pristine. So hopefully that stays like this. If not, I have backup upon backup because I'm a professional. Right, so let's get back to this. So I'm going to talk about CI/CD and beyond with GitHub Actions. Hopefully you got a chance to check out Mickey Gousset's session earlier. I think it was on yesterday. He did a really great introduction to GitHub Actions. If you didn't, I would highly encourage you to go and watch that one. He's an incredibly good presenter. He works for GitHub as well, so he knows his stuff, which means that he can tell you all of the ins and outs about it better than I can. What I would like to focus on a little bit more, though, is the kind of extra things that you can do with GitHub Actions. And so the best place to start is, what GitHub Actions actually is. And so GitHub Actions, as you might have guessed, or you might already know, is a great way of doing CI/CD. But the thing is, it's not just CI/CD. It's not just continuous integration, continuous delivery, or continuous deployment. And the reason I say that and point that out specifically is because you might not know from their marketing material, there's a really heavy CI/CD bias in the stuff that you see with GitHub. So this is their feature page from GitHub. And if we jump over just to the live version of that, we should see, there we go. This is the live version of this. And if we jump into automation and CI/CD, we can see that it's very heavily around automate everything, CI/CD, and then some other stuff. And then there's build, test, deploy. So all of their examples are built around CI/CD. Now, in no way would I say that this is a bad tool for CI/CD. It's getting really, really good. But I think it's overlooked a little bit what other stuff you can do with it. And so I want to focus a little bit more on that today, mainly because that's not something that most demos go into. They spend a lot of time going into the ins and outs of CI/CD and how you would use it for that. So even though it's for much more than CI/CD, you might not even know it from their marketing. You might not know it from the other presentations that you'll see. So I'm going to focus on some other stuff. But to do that, I think I really need to talk a little bit about what we do with CI/CD. So let's do the basic stuff. Let's do right from the start. Let's do some stuff. And to do that, I'm just going to walk over to my demo machine. Give me just a second. Right. Here's my demo machine. We're going to swap to the demo box there. Great. Just making sure everybody can see that. It looks good. You probably don't need to see me, so let's do that. All right, we're going to jump over to my application here. And please just ping me in the chat. I've got it open in the side. If you can't read anything, I tested this out. Everybody says it's fine who I've tested it with, but just to make sure. So this is our website. It's called Tailwind Traders. They're a company you may have seen from some other Microsoft demos. They sell hardware equipment. So, things like power tools and stuff for plumbing and electrical. Honestly, for this demo, we don't really care what they sell. We're really just going to be making some very superficial changes to the website and seeing how the CI/CD works with that. So what we've got is you can kill this GitHub status now, thankfully. I'm just going to go here. So what we have is we already have a workflow set up for this. And again, I'm skipping through these a little bit because all of the demos talk about this. But here is the example of our workflow, our basic workflow. Now, this is kind of similar to the one you would get with an out-of-the-box .NET application. We have a name for it. I'll just go through the schema briefly. We have a name for it. We have a trigger. So this will trigger when there's a push to the main branch. And of course, we can do things like on pull request and pull request, and obviously VS Code has some nice UI to help you with what different things you can trigger on. I'm just going to leave that there for the moment. And then we have a collection of jobs. And so these jobs are just the different collections of tasks that we might want to run. So we have a build job, which will run on an Ubuntu machine. I'm setting some environment variables, in this case, just a little thing to get it to ignore warnings because this is a demo. And then that build job has a collection of steps. So we're going to check out our code. We're going to set up .NET Core. We're going to set up Node. We're going to install some dependencies, run a .NET build, which is just a command line, and a .NET test. And so all this does really is means that when we push a new change to our main branch in our GitHub repository, we will just run this action. So what does that look like? Well, here's an example of that one. So main branch, not master. So this is me renaming the main branch to master. Not that exciting, but that's what it was. So if we click on build, that job that we've got there, we can see all of these steps running through here. And we can drill into them and see what the logs look like and all of that kind of stuff. Pretty standard for any kind of CI platform. But the thing here is we have this application, we're building it automatically when we make a change, but we're not deploying it anywhere, right? So we don't have any artifacts. This agent that we get when we do that build just kind of spins up, and then when we've finished, it just tears itself down again. We don't have access to what was built anymore. So we need to do a couple of things to get this into a deployable state and to allow it to deploy. So I'm going to add a little bit to this workflow, and we're going to talk about what types of things we're adding. So the first thing I'm going to do, and let's just get rid of this file menu. We don't need that. We're going to do a .NET publish. So exactly the same as the other ones, it's just we're publishing that CS project and we're dumping it to a staging folder. That's great. And the next thing we want to do is obviously deploy to Azure. So we're deploying to a website. Now I'm just going to pause here and point out a couple of things. One is that we have these tasks, these steps that just run command line. So anything which is run, just run something on the command line. If we're running on a Windows machine, it'll run in command line there or PowerShell or something like that. If it's Ubuntu, we're going to be running in Bash. But then we also have these ones that say users. And these ones will use actions from either GitHub or from the community. The great thing with these is you can copy this. So this is the Azure/Web Apps Deploy one. If you copy that and jump over to GitHub, and we'll just jump here, github.com/Azure/Web Apps Deploy. This is the code for that set of steps. So this is the code for that action. So you can see exactly what it does. All of this stuff is available, on GitHub. So you can see exactly what's going to happen when you run that action, if you want to. There's a link always at the top just to use this GitHub action with your project, and you can view that on the marketplace. And it'll tell you how to use it, give you some sample workflows. In this case, we've got lots of examples of these different templates. So .NET, Node, Java, Python, PHP even, and Docker, some sample YAML files and things like that. All of this great stuff to kind of get you started. What's great is like Azure, for example, publishes a ton of these actions. So you can see, we go to Azure/actions. This is kind of a collection of all of these actions. And you can see there's an Azure login, Azure CLI, Azure PowerShell, ARM deployments, Key Vault, all sorts of stuff that you can do with this one. There was a question about whether I'm running a extension in VS Code, and I don't think I am. As far as I know, this is just, if I am, it'd be the GitHub extension, but I don't know. You know what? I could probably find out. VS Code Insiders, because I don't have the GitHub extension in that one. Let me just zoom in 1000%, and we'll open folder. Just bear with me for a sec. I kind of like to answer these questions by just, trying stuff. And if I can't get it right, then it's going to be on me. So let's see. Can we do the same thing here on? There you go. So yes, I must be running an extension. That's almost certainly the GitHub extension. So that's the one that gives me this icon here, the GitHub icon, versus just the Git icon. There you go. Good question. All right. That was convenient. I installed Insiders today after watching the VS Code day, which I would highly recommend watching. There's some pretty cool stuff in it. So yes, the GitHub extension would be the one that gives you that IntelliSense or that autocomplete. Right, where was I? Yes, we were looking at all of these extensions. All of these actions that you can use for whatever you want. There's really a kind of almost endless number of these. I think there were almost 7,000 actions when I looked for them before, and you can just start using them. Like you just need to include them here, and then include any other information that you need. So the deploy to website is a good example of one because it asks for an app name. So this with is the list of parameters that you need to pass it. It asks for an app name, which in this case is called Tailwind Traders. That's a website. It asks for a publishing profile, and you can get this from Azure itself. It's basically just this gigantic string that you dump into a secret, and I'll show you the secrets in just a sec. And in this case, we're just going to tell it the package that we want to deploy is the output here of our .NET Publish. Before I show you the secrets, I'm just going to do this, and we're going to add one more thing just so we can see. And this is the upload artifact action as well. So this comes from GitHub, so it's one of the actions/upload artifacts. And it's basically going to take everything that's in this path, this staging path, and upload it to the server so we can use it down the track. And that'll become relevant in a little bit. So this file, by the way, just has to live in /GitHub, .github/workloads, and any YAML file that lives here will just kick off according to whatever triggers that you have here. All right, so let's commit and push this. We'll call this deploy and push. And so what we should see once that's finished pushing, and if Actions is truly back up and running, which I really hope it is, otherwise you're going to be getting a lot of screenshots. We should be able to see, if we go to Actions again, that commit has triggered a new deployment or a new build. And we can see if we drill into it, it'll be going through all of those steps. It's currently setting up the job and doing all that kind of work. Now, we don't want to wait for this to run through. It can take a few minutes. So I'm just going to show you one that I prepared earlier, as they say. So let's look at this one where I did deploy, and you'll see what that looks like at the end. So all it really did was added these extra steps to upload the artifact, deploy to the website, and then complete the job and so on. But the differences are, if we just go back, there's this artifact section. We can see drops. There's drop folder is this 443 meg collection here. So yeah, really, really handy for getting that out. If it doesn't deploy properly or if something's a little bit wrong and you want to see what that artifact looks like, this upload artifacts is a really handy way of doing it. Now, one more thing I just want to do as part of this, I'd be a bad kind of DevOps person if I suggested that you just do a build and deploy all in one hit, right? I really want to make sure that you're not just straight out doing a build, deploy into production, everything's fine, right? We want to make sure that what we're deploying to production is, a little bit nicer and that we can test it and so on. So the very first step for that would be to split that build and that deployment. Now, this is a relatively recently released feature. It was released at the last GitHub Universe, and it's the idea of these gates between or approvals between these multiple jobs. So you could always do multiple jobs, but they just follow on from each other directly or run in parallel. So I just want to show you what we might want to do. And the first thing is that after uploading the artifact, we want that to be the end of our build job. So we want to create a new job, which is for deployment. Now, thankfully, I can do a lot of copying and pasting here. So we can just grab all of this stuff. Oop, we don't need jobs. Grab all of this and just say we're going to do another one, which is our deploy job. It'll also run on Ubuntu. I should have had steps in there too. It'll also run on Ubuntu. I can set the same environment variable. It doesn't really matter. And then the one step is deploying to the website. Now, there's a couple of things I need to do. First is I need to set up a dependency. This deploy, if I just leave it like this, will run at the same time as the build. And that means obviously I won't have anything to deploy. So it'll just run in parallel on two Ubuntu machines. So to say there's a dependency, I just say needs build. So basically I'm saying, to run this job, I need this job to have completed. So that's the first thing. The next thing I want to do is actually get this folder. So what happens when we do these jobs is this first build job will run in a new agent, and then it'll tear that machine down and build a new one to do my to do my deployment job, which means that this folder, this staging folder that we had before, it's not going to exist anymore. So this is also where upload artifact comes into its own, because we've uploaded the results of that build. We can just pull it down again at the start of this one. This can be advantageous if you want to build in one environment or in several environments and then deploy all in one. I could say my deployment needs, build Ubuntu, build Windows, and so on, and have those as different jobs to build it for every environment and then deploy it in one spot. So I've uploaded the artifact in the build step. I'm going to download the artifact, and thankfully, these are really consistent, these two actions, upload artifact and download artifact, which means that I can just download it. Now, I don't need all of this. I can just say staging, because this source and the project and things like that, that doesn't exist in this context. So I'm just going to drop it in the staging folder and then upload from that staging folder. And that's really all I need to do. What this will do is it'll run in two different environments. Two different jobs. It'll run a build, upload the artifact, and then run the deploy. So I'm actually going to run this, but before I do, I'm just going to start delving a little bit into the and more part, or the beyond part of this. And I'm just going to add one more step at the start and the finish. So this is going to be a step from Lifex. So this is the repo. And you might notice the light behind me just here. There. I'm going to mirror it. It's a bit weird. There's that light. I'm just going to set that to white just to kind of reset the thing. And what this will do is it will use some, tokens and things like that, and then set the status to in progress. This is right at the start of the whole process. And then at the end, obviously, I want to do it again with setting the status to job status. There's one other thing that this adds, and this is this context, this always. So this step will run always, regardless of if any of the other ones failed, which means that if the job status turns out to be failure, then it will always run. So right at the start, it's going to start pulsing a nice little orange thing to let us know that it's going. And then at the end, it will hopefully turn green. And I think that's all we really need to do. So I haven't talked about secrets. I'm going to commit this and push it, and then we'll go and have a look at where these secrets live while this is building. So split and deploy. Oop. And colors. So let's just push this. And in a second, you should hopefully see that light up behind me. I've got to get my finger in the right spot. There we go, that one. We'll hopefully turn orange in a second. Let's just, there we go, split and deploy in colors. It's starting it up. And one big thing you can see is there's this build job and the deploy job, those two different ones. So if we drill into build, which it's just started doing, come on, we need the colored lights, otherwise it's really not an exciting demo. This is the entire reason I bought these lights, was to do little things like this. All right, well, while it's doing that, while it's starting that workflow run, let's just look at one more thing. And that is the what's it called? The secrets that we were talking about before. So to get to the secrets for your repo, you just go to settings and then down to secrets. And so secrets are essentially a one-way variable store, which just keeps all of the settings or the things that you want to use as tokens and settings and things like that, keeps them in a secure place that can't be read and doesn't appear in any logs to the best of our ability or to the best of GitHub's ability. So these Azure credentials that I have, I think I was actually using publishing profile. I have a few for a few different demos. I can update that variable if I want, but I can't read it. I can update it, I can remove it, but I can't read it. Oh, there you go. Maybe the light's glowing orange. Hey, thanks, Liam. Trust me, there's more colors. This is a very exciting demo. So what this basically allows me to do is it says, set these secrets up, and then it won't appear in the logs. It will get used in the right context, but they're not going to leak. Nobody's going to know what they are. It's a great way of hiding this information, but still being able to use it. The one thing I didn't do in this as well, the one thing I didn't do in this as well is define, which I should have done, is define an environment for this. So this is a new feature as well. I think it's still in private preview. You still need to get early access to it. But what I could also do here is in my deploy phase, say I'm deploying to an environment called production. And what that will do is it'll basically tag that job as a thing that's running in this production environment. Now, beyond the name, there's not really a lot to these environments right at the moment. If we jump over to settings again and have a look at, scroll down to environments, and again, this is a private preview. You probably won't have this unless you've been opted in. You can see I've got these two environments set up. I've got production and I've got staging. Now, the big advantage of these is not just I can say, oh, this is a deployment to production, but I can protect these environments. So I can say I can't go to production until I approve that deployment to production. So what it'll do is it'll do my build, and then it'll wait for me to say, yes, this is all good, this is ready to go, and then it'll go and deploy it to production. Or I can just wait a specific amount of time to give myself enough opportunity to check it and cancel that job if I need to. I can also set secrets for specifically that environment, which means that I could have the same build run or the same definition, essentially, or the same action or workflow run, and then just say, depending on where I'm deploying it to, just use the same secret name, but use it for the environment that I'm going to. So I could potentially use a variable for that environment name, a context-specific one, rather than just a static string. An example might be that I would use it rather than production. I could do it as something like, if it's a pull request, I'll use the pull request name or the branch name rather than main. So yeah, a lot of power there and a little bit of control that's starting to creep in. Now, I said I was just going to briefly touch on the CI/CD stuff, and I've taken a fair bit of time doing that. But if you have any questions, please feel free to dump them in Slack or in the chat. I've seen a couple of posts where people are sharing marketplace extensions as well. So there's a couple there. Yeah, there's the GitHub docs one, and then there's an example of the GitHub Actions one. So a couple of extensions you can use there. Right, great. I'm going to leave this camera on just so you can see that, but I'm going to switch back to the slides and we'll talk about a few more things. All right, actually, let's go back to my presenter view so you can see that. There we go. Right, so we did some stuff. One thing I didn't show you, which I should do as well, is that there are a lot of templates to get you started, not just in GitHub itself if you investigate those actions, but there's templates if you, within GitHub, go and have a look to start a job. So let's just quickly have a look at that. If I go to my actions and then say I want a new workflow, you can see that there's a whole lot of templates that it'll give me, as places to start. So if I wanted to publish a node package, I could do set up this workflow and it'll give me an example YAML file, put it in the right place, and then fill it out for me. I can also use these actions from the marketplace. So if I wanted to use that action, it will give me basically the documentation for that action itself right in this browser. When I'm finished with that, I can just do a commit and either do that to a branch for the commit or directly to that main branch. So I can get started here. It gives me a nice kind of starting point to go with. But again, this will only get you so far. You'll need to modify your YAML to get it to do exactly what you want. All right, presentation mode. Ooh. So there are some templates to get you started. We've seen them now. There's a couple of questions before we move on to the next little section. One is that we've been using Azure pipelines for a couple of years. This all appears very similar. To what degree are they compatible? So the YAML is different, but similar. I will find the link a little bit later, but there's a Microsoft employee, I believe, Steve Sanderson, who wrote a conversion tool and something like GitHub Actions to Azure Pipelines converter or the other way around or something like that. If anybody wants to do a quick Bing Google and paste the link in there, it's relatively easy to find and it does a reasonably good job of translating between the two of them, but it is different YAML. What happens under the covers though, they actually use pretty much exactly the same infrastructure. That's kind of an open secret. Almost all of the details of how it runs under the covers are exactly the same. The same agents will get used, or the same bits for those agents will get used for GitHub Actions as they will for Azure Pipelines. So in terms of how compatible they are, yes and no. They're very similar, but yeah. Will GitHub Actions overtake pipelines? So the intention is that GitHub Actions will become more and more fully featured and be able to kind of cover everything that Azure Pipelines does. It's not quite there yet. They're working extremely hard on it. If you're asking the question, will it make pipelines obsolete? The answer is no, not at the moment. There are no plans to get rid of Azure Pipelines, and there's a lot of stuff inside Microsoft that runs on Azure Pipelines and on Azure DevOps in general. Even if that is something that happens in the future, the migration would have to be very, very easy because we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of projects internally that rely on Azure Pipelines. So the answer is no, you can safely keep using Azure Pipelines. I wouldn't worry about that at all. If GitHub Actions doesn't yet do what you want it to do, then stick with pipelines. It's a perfectly good choice. It's a really good choice. Hopefully that answered it in a Microsoft official enough way. Thanks for that. I always expect that question, but I have to make sure I say the right things. So yes, we've got templates to get you started. We looked really briefly at the triggers, just a push to a main branch or a pull request or something like that. There are a lot of triggers. We'll talk about that in a sec. And we also had a little look at the dependent jobs and then also some environment stuff as well. A couple of things to note though, there are a lot of actions. So you can get to all of these actions by going to the marketplace. This is a search I did yesterday, 6,963 actions available. So there's a lot of them. They can do lots and lots of stuff. And if there's something you can't do, you can either write your own very easily, or you can just write a script. You can just run something on the command line. There's also a lot of triggers. So I showed you the push trigger and the pull request one, but here's a list that's just kind of the table of contents in the docs for all of the triggers that are available. And you can also filter inside those ones as well. So if I actually click on that link, I think it'll do this. Let's just, lots of warnings and stuff. Let's just try it over here. And you can also probably see that the light went green behind me, which is great. Let's just switch to here so you can see it. So here are the events that trigger the workflows. You can see that list of them all on the right. But if I just choose one at not at all random, issue comment, we can trigger a workflow to run when an issue comment, when a comment on an issue is created, or when one is edited, or when one is deleted. So even though there's one item in this table of contents, there's 3 here. So things like pull requests. There's a whole lot of activity types for a pull request, so I can filter based on those as well. I can also, if I jump over to my code again, I can also do things like exclude paths. Whoops. Is this my, path ignore. So I can ignore certain paths, and I'll do that in a second as well in one of those demos. So there's a huge number of things that I can do as part of this. So lots and lots of triggers, and then lots and lots of stuff that you can do in it. One thing that I will kind of admit to is that the workflow syntax can be a little bit tricky. So the way to actually put all this stuff together can be a little bit tricky, and it's a little bit of a learning curve. The documentation is all there, but sometimes the documentation is hard to find. In particular, finding out what variables and what things you have available to you that you can use in your pipeline. And we can see, by the way, in the background, that light went green. Everybody's suitably impressed, I'm sure. Also, mainly because we can hide my video, so you don't have to be subjected to that. Thanks, Liam. Liam's just giving me little cheers every time I do something like that, which is awesome. So the syntax for GitHub Actions can be a bit tricky. I have a bit of a pro tip, and that is if you want to get some context on what things are available to you, you can just run a task that'll just dump it to JSON. So I'll jump into this link, and we should hopefully be able to see that in a sec when it opens, when it's finished telling me about all the warnings about things I shouldn't do. Whoa. Okay, that's gone all weird. I remember this. Somebody pointed out to me that WebEx completely takes over a whole lot of shortcuts. So I'm not sure what you can see, but for me, WebEx has just taken over 3 of my monitors at the same time. So what I'm going to do really quickly is, no, it's just changed to whiteboard. All right, I'm going to share that screen again. Whew. All right, that was fun. Right, no more shortcuts. No more shortcuts there. Cool. So here's the workflow syntax for GitHub Actions. I'm just going to zoom in really briefly. I need to make sure I'm on the right window. Zoom in really briefly. And this will go through all the different things you can do. The name syntax, the on syntax, the on event name types, all sorts of stuff like that. One thing that it is pretty good at is kind of listing everything that's there. You can go to the events that trigger those workflows, which will take you to that page we were on before. And then look for filter patterns. There's a cheat sheet that it gives you. There's a lot of stuff in there that's really handy. In terms of finding out what information is available to you when you're running, I would look at this context and expression syntax on the menu on the left. So this gives you information about how you write expressions and what's available in your context. So I think you saw in a couple of the examples, I was using this syntax, this dollar curly braces syntax, exactly like this with the if statement. And the contexts that are available to you, there's a GitHub context, an environment context, a job context, a steps context, and so on. You can drill into these to an extent. But then once you get to github.action, that'll give you a name. Where's another example? github.event. So that event is a JSON object itself. So that gives you a whole lot more information. There's more things in that event object, and it's a little bit harder to find out what is in that object, which is where this kind of pro tip comes, which is this dump that out, that echo to JSON GitHub event. It's a really good way of finding out what's available to you if you're looking for a particular object. Now, I've just noticed I've started my video again. Let's just kill that. Cool. All right, so that's enough for the moment about that kind of stuff. Let's just do a couple more things while we've got our last 15 minutes going on. I'm just going to switch back to my demo one. We're going to reset our light, hopefully. There we go, just so it's white. And we're going to make a couple of changes here. So we're going to do a couple of things to the existing workflow. One is, so you don't need me for the moment. One is that we are going to add a filter in here. So we're not going to kick one off every single time. Sorry, just good old YAML. So we're going to trigger on any push to main, but we're going to ignore any workflows that I create. And that's just so when I create some more workflows, we're not going to run this whole build every single time. So we're going to do that. We're also going to add, just so we can see it, another one, which is a workflow dispatch. Now this basically just gives me a button, which means that I can just push it to build at any time. Right now, it will only build, it'll only run this workflow when I push to my main branch. If I put in workflow dispatch, it'll give me a button that'll let me do it as well. And I just realized I was on the wrong screen. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. So I did this paths ignore to just ignore anything in that workflows folder, and then workflow dispatch. So that's where we're at. We've got this, we've updated this main one, uploaded this main build. So we're not going to build every single time. The other thing we need to do is create a new workflow so I can show off a few more things. So let's just do it in here. I'm going to create a lights.yaml. And in here, I'm just going to type really quickly, just bear with me, a new workflow that I'm just creating now. So this one, same syntax. I'm calling it LifeX bulb. That's the bulb behind me. And then on an issue comment, so when somebody creates a comment on an issue, or when there's a workflow dispatch, so again, I can just click a button and it'll run this for me. I'm going to run a single job, which is called lights. It'll run on the latest Ubuntu. I'm setting some environment variables just to make them a little easier to access as I go through. And these are just coming from my secrets. They're basically just the same API keys as I was using before to talk to my light behind me. And I'm running a couple of steps. One is that I'm dumping some information from that comment. And here's an example of some context that is really useful in this scenario that I might not have known unless I dumped it out in JSON. So the event.comment.body, so basically what somebody commented. I'm running some fancy bash that I had to get somebody else to help me write because that's not my skill set, to basically strip out any kind of hex color code. So basically this is just looking for 6 characters. If I get it, then I will set a variable or an output variable that I can use later on. And the way I do that is just this echo and this fancy syntax set output. Again, this is stuff that you can do, not always the easiest thing to find in the docs. So a little tip here, you can set these variables to use later on. So I'm setting a variable called light color. I'm setting it to the color that I got from that comment. And then I am referring to it down here in the next one. So this is a different LifeX bulb one, which will set the light I specify to a specific color for a period of time, in this case, 15 seconds. To do this, I need to give that task an ID, that step an ID. So I've called it set light color, and then I can refer to it later on by saying steps.setLightColor.outputs, and then that variable that I set before. A little bit of kind of hackery to get this to work, but it works really nicely. The one other thing that I've done is I've said I only want this light to change this color, sorry, if it's an issue comment that triggered the event, triggered this workflow, because I also have workflow dispatch. So if I click the button, obviously I'm not going to get a comment. I can't pull a color, in which case I'm just going to set it to white. So I might want to run different things based on different contexts. So that's what that's going to do. Now this one is a little bit easier to demo. So we're just going to push, and we'll jump back over. And the first thing we'll notice is if we go to Actions, there was a .NET Core one that we were using before. If I refresh that, we now have a LifeX bulb one as well. Now it doesn't have any runs. It does have this workflow dispatch trigger, which means I can just say run workflow. Now that's going to be really boring because the light behind me is white, as you can see. So what I'll do is, just while I'm on here, there is a QR code on the screen you should be able to see. And if you want to, you can jump over and just leave a comment on the issue here, change my light. Now, we've done it a few times before in testing, so you can see a few people did a few of those. I did one the other day, which set it to purple. And so if you hit that QR code and leave a comment that has a hex color code, hopefully a couple of people will do it. Otherwise, this is a really boring demo. We should see that come through and actually color the light behind me. So again, I'll leave my face up there so you can see. And I'll leave this open while we're doing that. Right, so we're doing a couple of things here just to demonstrate there's more stuff you can do with this. I mean, the easiest thing to do is just kind of change these light colors. I'm just going to skip around a bit to see if anybody's been doing anything. And just in case nobody's left a comment yet, I am just going to leave one myself. Oh, there we go. That looks valid. So let's check out the action. Let's run. There you go. Change my light. We can see that's a comment created by Hilly. And hey, there you go. Set the color in the background. So pretty basic demo, pretty easy thing to do. We were setting the color before by doing some, fancy stuff. I'm going to leave my camera on this one so you can all see the colors if you want to just keep playing with it. The QR code will be up there as well. So top there. Even when I move to the slides, it should hopefully be there. Right. Before we go, I'm just going to do one more thing. Now, you noticed as well when I had this action, we've got a few of these going, that I could click this button to just say run the workflow. Now, I have all of these triggers available to me, but they're all things that happen within GitHub. I might want to run a workflow for something that happens outside GitHub. So maybe somebody sends a message in Teams. Maybe somebody's using an internal service that manages their tickets, and I want to be able to run a workflow based on that. There's a really, really easy way to do that. In my code here, we have a workflow dispatch, but we can also set a repository dispatch. So again, let's just create a new one, a repo dispatch YAML file, and then we are going to dump some stuff in. Now, this is a super simple example. Repository dispatch, we can filter based on type. And in this case, I'm just calling it demo dispatch. I can call it whatever I want. And I'm loving seeing the kind of glow of the colors hit the screen here. So keep that up. All I'm doing here is one job, which will run on Ubuntu. It'll echo hello world, and then it will echo the payload that I send. So super simple example here, but at least something that you'll be able to see how it works. So let's just commit and push that one. Exactly the same syntax here as well. We're just kind of triggering on a new event type, and we're pulling in some data from that JSON. So let me just check that that's happened. If I refresh this, I should be able to see a third one, repository dispatch example. Great. So I've run one called exactly this before, so you can see it a couple of times there. But how this works, the easiest way to show you would just be to do some curl. So Let's just dump that in. And I'll talk about this in a sec. Make sure that's big enough. So all we're doing is a post, HTTP post, setting two headers, the accept header, just to say this is a GitHub JSON, and we're setting an authorization token. Now this token, I'll show you where to get it in a sec, but it's basically just a personal access token tied to your user. And then we're hitting api.github.com/repos/whatever the repository or the organization it is, /the repo name /dispatches. And the body is just a JSON object which has the event type name, which is what we filtered on, and then a JSON object which is the client payload. This can be anything you want, essentially, as long as it's valid JSON. So if I run this, we should be able to see here in a second, there'll be a demo dispatch, which will be competing for resources with all of the light colored changes. And we'll see that run. We've just got our build job that's running now, and it'll dump out that string. So you can it's a simple example, but you can see how you can basically fire an HTTP post event on any external application. And as long as it has that access token, it'll do that work. To get that access token, let's just see if it's going to give me that workflow. And again, it's competing for resources with all of the light color changes and things like that. So one more chance. All right, let's look at one we prepared earlier. This just dumps out hello world, and then the comment that I made, in this case, hello NDC London. Just pull that from the JSON. Now to get that personal access token, you go to your profile. So your profile photo on the top right, and you go to your organization settings. So I think that's either your organizations or, nope, sorry, settings. I wrote the wrong thing down. And then org settings and developer settings. Sorry, developer settings, personal access tokens. I wrote the wrong notes down. Good work, Damo. And then you can just generate a new token and use that. It's basically just a string, and you pass that through in the header. Cool. Very glad that everybody's changing the color in those lights. I figured colors, it can't be that offensive. Right. So if you want to keep playing with that, you're more than welcome to. I'm just going to swap back to here because this is better for slides. You're more than welcome to. The QR code is here as well, just in case that one wasn't big enough, but that's a bit silly. We really don't need that. Right. So just kind of summarize the last few things that we've seen. The stuff that you can do for the not CD story. There are thousands of actions. We've seen that, 7,000 or so, I think, roughly when I looked. You can pretty much have unlimited triggers effectively. So there's all of the stuff that happens within GitHub, and there's a huge number of those things. But there's also anything that happens externally, you can use repository dispatch. So essentially, there's unlimited things that you can trigger on. And as far as I can tell, you can have an unlimited number of workflows on a repository. Now, obviously, you can't run them all in an unlimited way. We're not going to give you unlimited, power to run whatever you want. We'd end up just having Bitcoin mining going on 24/7. But you can have 35 workflows. You can have 100 workflows on your repository that do different things if you really want. Which brings us to price. What can I do? So this is probably a little bit small. Essentially, all it's saying is that there is a free option which gives you several thousand free minutes of workflow runs. There's a team option which gives you more 1,000 minutes, an enterprise option, GitHub One option, and so on. So let's see if we can see those. There you go, 2,000 action minutes per month for free, 3,000 for team, which is $4 per user per month. Enterprise, we're up to 50,000. And then GitHub One is one of the things where you call call the GitHub sales team, and they'll tell you how much money, ask you how much money you have, and sell it to you that way. Joking, of course they wouldn't do that. So in answer to the question we had right at the start, GitHub Actions, exciting, cool, but what is it? It's not just CI/CD. It's essentially a tool to automate everything, anything you want, right? And I have abused this in many, many ways while I've been playing with it as well. The least of which is changing the color of that little bulb behind me. So I would strongly recommend you go and check it out. Totally free to use, very, very powerful. Right, I can see, as far as I can tell, I have like a minute or two left of my planned 50 minutes, but you're more than welcome to jump in with questions. There's one that I haven't answered, which was where can I access the slides? I will put them online and I will post a link in the Slack in track 4 after this session. I might have already uploaded them in a previous event, so I'll either find those ones and post the link, or I'll make a new link with those slides. The demos, by the way, were all in that repository, this AKA MS ADO 40 demos. Just be aware, I'm going to be killing that and rebuilding it and doing all sorts of stuff to it. But you can usually look at the previous actions and go through to find them out. I don't know whether, I can't remember if I made that one private. Let me just really quickly check over here. That is a public repository, so knock yourself out. All of the code, all of those workflows for the next little while at least will be in GitHub Workflows. So go for it, and I will make the slides available as well. Put that link in there. Cool. Any other questions, or even better, do you want me to just try and do some things while it's all working? Feel free to hit me up with that. Otherwise, I'll be around on Slack for the next little while. Feel free to keep changing the light color. I'll leave it on for the next little while. If you want to just scare me with dark red pulsing things and stuff like that. Otherwise, thanks everyone.
Thank you very much. That was great.
Cool. The repo, yes, I can show that repo again. That URL is github.com/demovisa.org. Tailwind Traders. Or the QR code will take you to the issues anyway, and you can go from there. Oh, actually, you know what I could do? I could just completely type it in here. So, question, is there a way of prioritizing builds from different jobs? I don't believe so, no, is the short answer. Yeah, there's not at the moment. What you could do, I suspect, is if you are, well, I'm just putting the sales hat on. If you want to make sure that a build always runs, then you make sure that you pay for enough agents that all run concurrently. But prioritizing those builds isn't there yet. If you need that, if you absolutely need that functionality, Azure Pipelines does give that functionality. You can, in a kind of a roundabout way, you can have agent pools that have specific names or specific tags, and then you can say, these are the priority ones, and then they will always pick up an agent from that pool. That functionality, I don't believe, is available in GitHub Actions yet. I'll say yet. I don't know whether it's on their backlog, but yeah, that's something that's there. AKMS, ADO, what am I doing? 40 issues. Okay, so that's the link to the issues. That's probably the easiest one to remember. And then from issues, you just go to code. So I won't reset this for a while. You'll know when I'm doing this presentation again, because everything will just get turned into the starting point. Cool. All right. I'll just wait on here for a little bit longer. Feel free to hit me up. Otherwise, I will be on the Slack channel. Oh yes, sorry, that is a good point from Jens there. You can have private agents too. So these are the cloud hosted agents that I was using, but you can have self-hosted agents as well if you want. Yeah, very good point, Jens. Thank you. That is in the docs if you have a look as well. Like if you just do a search for that information, that's there. You can also run jobs in containers as well if you define those containers up front. which means that they can run inside an environment that has everything that you need installed, and you can have them running in a private agent if you want. So there's a lot more power with the agents that actually run these tasks than I kind of suggested. But yeah, you can run private agents as well as the cloud hosted agents. They have different limits on how many you can run at a time and how much they cost and all that kind of thing too. Thanks for that. Right. Cool. Thank you very much, everybody. If you want to get in contact with me as well, Twitter is the easiest way, or demovisa at Microsoft as well. That'll get to me too. If you think of a question later on, or I will be in track 4 or in general on that Slack. Cool. Thanks, everybody.